Tonight's show, update on the Bundy Ranch, Harry Reid's new statement, and Obama confiscates National Guard helicopters.
Well, it's not over. Well, it's not over. Well, it's not over.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
Live from the room of Mirror's studio, you're listening to Foster Brothers on Point. Turn your selector switch to the fire position. The show is now live. I'm Hayes Foster. My brother Stephen Foster is here with me. We're the Foster Brothers. We are your radio hosts for tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Bundy Ranch. We just want to give you an update on what's going on in that situation. Maybe some of you have heard our other YouTube radio show. We appreciate everyone listening to that. We've got quite a few listens on that.
That's right. Today is Thursday, April 17th, 2014. There is some new developments. It's 5:30 in the afternoon. Apparently, Harry Reid has made a statement today, and he has made a statement directly against all the supporters that are supporting Clive and Bundy. Apparently, the BLM has come in and illegally slaughtered some of his cattle. New photographic evidence has emerged today, which that is directly against the court order. So the federal agency has directly violated law. But they're calling the domestic terrorists the ones that were supporting him. Yeah, Tubbs, that's right. Actually, we have a clip of Mr. Reid and his tyrannical statement. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is in town today, and we wanted his take on the ordeal. He hasn't been very vocal about the showdown in recent days, and today he wasn't either. Here's what he did have to say.
Is there anything you would like to say about what's going on down south with Clive Bundy and the BLM?
Well, it's not over. We can't have an American people that violate the law and just walk away from it. So it's not over.
There you heard it straight from the tyrant, Harry Reid, Senator of Nevada. He's very bold. He's very out in the open, as many of these traitors to our country are. The thing of it is, it seems like they've had such a run on roughshod over citizens' rights. A lot of people, this did not start under the Bush administration or the Obama administration. The federal government on many levels has been running roughshod over citizens' rights in this country for over 100 years, whether you want to say that when the monetary system was compromised in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act, we can go back that far. That's definitely a milestone, and right after that it seemed like there was a lot of deterioration going on in this country.
Hayes, let's get right into the domestic terrorist statement by Harry Reid today. Today, Harry Reid was at the Las Vegas Paris Hotel and Casino, and he made a statement about the Bundy supporters as nothing more than domestic terrorists. He also added, I repeat, what happened there was domestic terrorism.
Now, what you're seeing is, as you probably noticed, since 9/11, initially, first the threats were extreme Muslim jihadis flying planes into the buildings, and that's why the Patriot Act was pushed through hastily. The NDAA, where Americans can be arrested with no trial, which is a violation of their constitutional rights. Now, the narrative, as it was so well framed by the tyrant Harry Reid, the narrative now is if you support citizen rights, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, if you show up for a protest to support a citizen who makes a decent, honest living, you are now considered a domestic terrorist, and there are free speech zones that are set up, and you can only have free speech in these designated areas.
That's right. And the story continues on. Reid claimed that Bundy had viewed the United States as a, quote, foreign government, while accusing his supporters of promoting violence. Also, there was hundreds and hundreds of people from around the country that came there, Reid said. They had sniper rifles on the freeway. They had weapons. They had automatic weapons, and they had children lined up. They wanted to make sure that the children got hurt first. What if others tried the same thing, he said.
Now, what I find very interesting about this is you see the Tyrant Reid complaining about law-abiding citizens, which do have a Second Amendment right to have rifles and firearms. They're complaining about the tactic that they used on the Cliven Ranch and the Cliven family when the BLM and other supporting agencies, such as the FBI, showed up with an overwhelming army of snipers themselves with rifles. So here we have, I guess maybe he's shocked that Americans are actually standing up for other Americans, by saying, oh, well, you use force. Oh, well, guess what? We have the right to use force also.
Well, the BLM, they had tanks, they had armored personnel carriers, they had snipers of their own. They all had, full automatic weapons, which a lot of the people at the ranch most likely didn't have. And they had a command center, and they had a base back behind where they were positioned at. So, who had the bigger force? The BLM had a bigger force there.
The BLM had a bigger force initially, and I think what happened is the BLM eventually got shocked and overwhelmed at the show of support that showed up for Cliven Bundy and his family and for an American citizen who's just trying to make a living. I think that's what maybe backed off the BLM for the moment.
This is definitely showing the turn of the opinion of the people of America. They're fed up. They're sick of all of it. This is just one more example of too much force. They're tasering people. They're throwing women to the ground. It's been going on. People are getting killed. I mean, it's to the point to where almost everyone knows someone that's been tasered by the police.
Yeah. It's so now you have a traitorous sitting senator, who is upset that Americans are now showing up with the same force that any alphabet soup agency would show up when they're going to do an illegal op. So I guess maybe Mr. Harry Reid doesn't understand that if you play with fire, you can get burned. And I just want to address something too while we're on the subject of violence. Me or my brother have not called for any violence whatsoever in any manner, but if someone points a gun at you, that is a death threat. Always keep that in mind. And they're basically threatening your life, and that's a universal situation. And I've heard a lot of talk on the radio. Obviously we do talk radio, so we monitor other shows. Glenn Beck's been rattling his rattle trap off a lot lately, over calling the people that showed up to support Cliven Bundy, that's unpatriotic, and they just want violence. I say that's BS, to put it mildly. If anyone shows up with guns, that means they're a direct threat to you, your family, your friends, and those around you, and you have a guaranteed constitutional right to protect those around you and yourself. So let's just get that straight, Mr. Beck.
So Cliven Bundy's great-great-grandfather came out to Nevada before it was Nevada, settled the land. No one was around. It was his ranch, and all these this area in question was originally their land. Over the years, the federal government has tried to lay their hands on it and take claim to it. Now, they maintain to this day grazing rights, which means they have right to have cattle and access the water there. So the federal government comes in and takes some cattle, and later today we've discovered that a lot of the bulls were slaughtered and shot with bullets from the helicopters. So last week when we saw the helicopters flying around, we now know what they were doing.
That's right. The statement that was released today by the gastrointestinal tumor on this country, the BLM, they, and this is a quote, they had to kill some of the bulls because they, quote-unquote posed a safety hazard. So basically, it sounds like the Cowboys were having trouble with the Bulls. So, I mean, what do? You've got to shoot them, right?
That's a pretty good explanation if you're an idiot. But seriously, so here's a landowner that realizes the federal government is actually breaking law. There might have been a court order, but we're realizing that court order was breached by the BLM. So what do you do as a citizen? Well, like most citizens that are willing to stand up for themselves, that still have the courage left in them, they're going to stand up, and they got a lot of attention. A lot of people came down there. It's a right in this nation to carry a gun, and they were carrying guns. And what does the BLM say? And what does Harry Reid say? Oh, they had guns. They were on their freeway, and they had guns. Oh, it was so scary.
Yeah, and that's the newest, and it's not a revelation. This material that we're going over, as far as them framing average citizens who exercise their guaranteed rights as domestic terrorists, that's no more of a fairy tale. They're trying to demonize Americans. I've seen a lot of internet hit pieces, calling the people that showed up in support of Clive and Bundy redneck bubbas. I'm sure we'll probably eventually hear, they'll say that, well, because they support Clive and Bundy, they must be a racist, which is a load of bull crap. All that is just another social control mechanism, which I think is starting to lose its effectiveness. The race card just doesn't have the zing it used to have. Maybe in the 90s, you might get embarrassed if someone called you a racist. I think America's past that by now.
A lot of people have moved on, and a lot of the Generation X and lower, they don't view race as an issue anymore. Everyone's equal, because America is very well diversified now. But I do want to say who is the real domestic terrorist here. It is Harry Reid. There is a domestic terrorist in this story, and Senator Harry Reid is the one that's trying to bring in a solar plant. He has his son, which is a chief lobbyist, lobbying for this solar company based out of China, which has ties to the Chinese government, which they're trying to acquire grant money and federal money, which is our taxpayers' money, to bring this solar plant in. That is domestic terrorism.
That's right. When you run roughshod over families that have been ranching on land since, what was the date? I believe is the late 1800s, 1877, I believe, if I'm correct. That's how long the Bundy Ranch has been out there, making a living, raising, cattle, which is, that's honorable. At least you're not sitting back collecting entitlement checks or, collecting tax dollars and kind of skimming off the top like a lot of these domestic traitors that we have in office.
Now, a lot of these quick-witted liberals are claiming that Mr. Bundy and his family are the ones free loafing here. Hayes, what do you think about that? They're the ones with the grazing rights, and it's the mainstream media like MSNBC, CBS, ABC. They're spewing out the garbage. They're spewing out the lies that he has no rights to the land.
Well, they're talking about he owes back grazing taxes. I think that, obviously, if you trust the U.S. government, you should probably ask Native Americans how that worked out for them. They have a history of lying, whether they're going to use extortion, force-on-force violence to get their way. They basically run roughshod over most citizens. And, let me just say something on a positive note. I want to congratulate and thank everybody that showed up at the Bundy Ranch in Clark County over the last weekend. Those are honorable Americans, and I'm talking about the ones who are armed and unarmed. Those of you who travel to Clark County, Nevada, let's go ahead and mark that as freedom in America, 1, New World Order, 0. And we are continuing to cover this story because apparently a lot of the BLM agents are still on site. They have not evacuated. And like the traitors Harry Reid said, it's not over.
No, it's not. A lot of us know Sheriff Richard Bank. and he's made a statement, and this is what it says. Not only is the BLM not acting or not actually backing off the Clive and Bundy Ranch, Sheriff Mack of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officer Association has revealed stunning information. On the Ben Swan Show, Mack said that he's received intelligence from multiple credible sources inside the BLM in Las Vegas Metro. Said there is no question the federal government is planning to raid the Bundy home and the homes of all their children who live on the property.
So there you have it. I think what has happened is, yes, the BLM and other alphabet soup agencies backed off over the weekend for the moment, and they're waiting for probably the armed citizens to leave, whether you want to call the armed citizen militia. That's just a term. In fact, every armed citizen is considered under U.S. code the militia. They're waiting for things to cool down, and then I think they're going to move back in probably and use cover of night, use typical nighttime raid tactics. I think that's probably ultimately what's going to play out. And I want everybody out there to keep the Bundy family in their prayers. I know I've been praying for them. I've been praying for the situation out there. So let's just everybody do that.
It's well established. I used to live in the vicinity of D.C., and a lot of people employed by the government or government contractors are social engineers. And what they have these huge think tanks, corporations hired out by the government to do scenario planning. So like a lot of what ifs. I wouldn't be surprised if this scenario's been think tanked and social engineered. There's really only two ways I see this going. They can do a raid on the Bundy family, and there's probably going to be casualties on both sides. Or they can just proceed and do it the right way in the court systems. And if the Bundys are in the wrong, they can go in and they can put liens against their property like most state judges would rule. This federal judge ruled a little bit differently. Now it's a kangaroo court, obviously, when you have a federal judge making a federal decision that benefits the federal government.
Yeah, and I'd just like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, MyOneSupply.com. Foster Brothers on Point would like to thank MyOneSupply.com for making this show possible. MyOneSupply.com, supplier of fine firearms and tactical gear. MyOneSupply.com carries Magpul, Eberly Stock, Trigicon, EOTech, and many more top shelf brands. MyOneSupply.com offers genuine military surplus and survival items. From the battlefield to your front door, check out MyOneSupply.com.
So what these social engineers are probably thinking is two ways. There's a slaughter which is going to enrage a lot of American people. There were millions of people probably that wanted to go down and help the Bundys, but with the economy, it's hard to break away from a job. So you're going to have an enraged public if they do go in and do a slaughter, a Waco Ruby Ridge slaughter. So, I'm recommending to the federal government to do the right thing. And you already know the answer. You know what's going to happen if you go and slaughter them. You're going to have civil unrest in America. I'm not saying this. It's just a known fact that we're at the tipping point in America, and everyone knows this. This is not a big secret at all.
Yeah, and just to give everybody a snapshot of where we're at, this is some military news. I saw this on the April 14th. Let's see. What we're dealing with is the Department of Defense is going to confiscate 192 AH-64 Apache attack choppers from National Guard units around the country. And you may be scratching your head, well, Hayes, why are you even talking about that? Well, I'm talking about that because the Apache helicopter has one purpose. That's death and destruction. Those things, you can Google them and look at them, and you pretty much know it's all business. It has chain-fed weapon on it. Some of them carry Hellfire missiles. This is a serious helicopter. Now, you say to yourself, now, Stephen, Why would they take that from the National Guard and transfer that to the Army? You got any thoughts on it?
Oh, I've got a thought on it. There's actually some real patriots there, you know. I think Obama has made some statements about he's wanting a civilian security force. Hayes.
Yeah, I think we have a clip of that.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
So there you go, Hayes. Obama wants a well-armed civilian force. Does that sound familiar to the BLM?
Looks like, the BLM has been used recently as a national security force. We all know the Department of Homeland Security has recently made, absolutely ridiculous ammo purchases.
Along with the post office. And
oh, yeah. The latest is the United States Postal Office. They put in a bid for ammunition. So you're scratching your head saying, are they arming the mail carriers, that are in bad neighborhoods? What's going on? Or are they just trying to spread around the purchase so it isn't coming from one alphabet agency, so it didn't look as over the top on paper? That's what I think's going on right now. It's obvious the Postal Service is not using any weapons. Some of their investors will carry a weapon, which is pretty ridiculous, but this is all for arming up the civilian force. That's to go against the general public. And if you're hearing this broadcast, that means they're arming up against me, you, and everybody listening out here. And is there anyone surprised gun sales are out of just astronomical right now? It's no surprise. The government's arming up for war. The citizens are arming up for war. We're living in a very dangerous time right now. I would say anybody who would argue that point with you, they either are just thinking about riding off in the sunset on a pension. Maybe they work for one of these alphabet soup agencies. I don't know, or they're just not paying attention.
I just want to go ahead and say, if you do work for one of these alphabet agencies, if you're not trying to affect change from within immediately, you need to get out, because, you're part of the problem just by associating with them. Because if you leave and if everyone else left, there wouldn't be anything left, for anyone to do. So if you do work for one of these agencies, all of them, you need to go ahead and get out, or, go ahead and try to bring it down internally. And what I mean by that is, go ahead and reveal the corruption. I've worked in government. I know good and well corruption's all over the place. It's easy to find if you open your eyes.
Yeah, it's just it's systemic corruption in this country right now on a federal level, down to the state level, even the local level. It's rampant, and I know what everybody's thinking. Well, what can I do? Well, maybe you can do a radio show. Me and my brother, we were sitting there. We see the state of the country, and we said, what can we do? How can we help? How can we get the word out? So we decided to do a radio show. That's why we're here.
We've been telling people for years, we had a reputation in Nashville for showing up to events with bullhorns. We got to the point to where if we showed up without a bullhorn yelling and talking about, at that time, Donald Rumsfeld and Bush, people were saying, where's the bullhorn? Well, now we've got a bigger bullhorn. It's called the podcast and radio.
Yeah, now the bullhorn is Foster Brothers on Point. And we just want to thank everybody out there for listening to our show. And we want to thank our sponsor, MyOneSupply.com, for making everything possible.
Getting back to the Bundy Ranch, Hayes, some new evidence that has emerged today is a federal judge has said that the BLM has engaged in criminal conspiracy against the ranchers. Over 20 years, the Bureau of Land Management engaged in a literal, intentional conspiracy against Nevada ranchers to force them out of business, according to a federal judge whose court opinion exposes the BLM's true intent against Clive Bundy. Now, is it ironic that Clive Bundy is called the last rancher of Clark County?
Yeah, apparently all of his neighbors who were herding cattle on that area, they have been run off of their property at this point. And just so everybody knows, let's clarify something. This country was not built on government worship or the government reigning roughshod or supreme over everybody. This country is based on individual rights. You can see that definitely from the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights. The framers of this country made sure that everyone understood the citizens' rights trumps any alphabet soup agency. Let me say it again. Citizens' individual rights trump alphabet agencies and the federal government. Okay? Let's just get that out in the open, because if anyone's unclear about it, hopefully they're clear now.
I was just shocked to see all the mainstream media, the way they were presenting this story. They were presenting it as this is a clear-cut case of someone not following the laws. And the people that were supporting him were supporting someone that was unlawful. And so that was their angle, to demonize any supporters of Clive and Bundy. Hayes, what do you think about that?
What do you do with an illegal law? It's your obligation and your duty to ignore an illegal law. And that's exactly what Clive and Bundy and his family has done. And, citizens are backing him up because they understand that there's been so much precedence of the federal government overstepping its boundaries. And like Stephen said earlier, we are at a tipping point in this country. Let's pray. Notice I didn't say hope, because Obama ruined that word during his campaign. Let's pray, because let's not put our faith in government. Let's put our faith in God and the citizens of this country that can actually really affect change. Let's hope nothing kicks off a second American Revolution. Let's keep it peaceful if we can.
I think that's exactly why that there was people there supporting Clive and Bundy last weekend on Saturday when he was retrieving his cattle. Those people weren't there to, inflict or impose any ill will towards any BML agents. They were there to maintain peace. They were acting as unofficial peace officers, as a militia should. And, I'm assuming most people there were not militia. That's a loose term used these days.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, under, U.S. code, I don't have it in front of me right now, but anybody of able age is part of the militia, and you should keep your firearms at ready, ammunition at ready, probably a good backpack with supplies at ready at all times. And just do that, if not anything, for not any other reason, just for the safety of your family and yourself. It's just a good idea.
We're definitely at some weird times in this nation. We've allowed corrupt politicians to stay in office longer than they had under the guise that they were going to bring us change. And I can't tell you how many people that I've met that were pretty extreme Democrats, or just even on the fence, that voted for Obama, and after he was put in office, they actually cannot believe what he's been doing, and they view him as a terrorist now. These are Democrats and traditional liberal type people.
Yeah, just let's do what they do for internal use only. Our government has been infiltrated by terrorists. They are sitting senators. They're in the House of Representatives, and we'll just say keep an eye on them. Those are the ones that are making a lot of money, just skimming off the top on tax dollars and making corrupt deals with foreign governments.
I would say keep an eye on your federal judges too. That we have to throw those in that pile, because they're the ones enforcing when the rubber meets the road, like in the Clive and Bundy situation. That judge probably made an illegal decision on that ruling.
So we're going to wind the show down, and I just want to encourage everybody out there, keep the Bundys and that whole situation in your prayers. We'll do the same thing. We appreciate you listening to our radio show, and we'll see you next Thursday evening.
Well, it's not over. Well, it's not over. Well, it's not over.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.